It's the first time I ever met him too, in first bit space. I've met him as a live chatter before.
Right. I've been around as a different name before too. Ron Solo.
Oh, okay, I remember Ron
Yeah,
Solo.
if you remember that guy.
Yeah, you were a pain in the ass, if I remember correctly.
Sometimes, yeah.
So, what what brought you back? You were gone for a long time. It was Ron Solo, right?
Right. Um, I don't know. Sometimes I would get in an argument with you and then lose hope. Like I lose hope in people pretty easily. I'm like, oh well, there's this guy's limitation. Let me move on, you know. But then eventually I'll try other people and then realize they're not even close to where this guy was, and it's where I'm at now.
I mean,
um,
funny, you're disagreeing with me. I don't see it as a limitation of yours.
I know I tend to see it that way a lot of times, though, especially in the moment,
Hmm.
and then a lot of times I'll end up saying things I don't that I'll I guess regret. Not that I didn't mean them in the moment, but probably wouldn't have put it all out there like that if I hadn't been so heated.
Of course, all those conversations were me talking with my voice and you talking with in text in the chat, right?
Well, yeah,
In the
I have
comments or
I'm
whatever.
not the best at typing fast,
Right. So,
so I'll have like and you with your words, you'll just be like meh 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 meh, and then you're like 10 points away from where I started, and I have no time to catch up. You know?
that's a good reason to want to engage face to face. I've explained this to people in the chats before. It's just not a good forum to come in and try to debate me. You know, it's like you're at a distinct
Oh, that's yeah,
disadvantage of field.
true. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. Though. I don't want to try to
So
get you or
what?
anything, but
Whatever. What are, I don't see. I really don't care. I'm not. I'm down
I know.
to talk about anything either combatively, non-combatively, controversially, or not, or whatever. So what topics have been piquing your interest in general? Or
Lately, it's been I've identified as an INTP for I don't know, loosely for like I don't know 6-ish years or something like that since I took the like 16 personalities test
mm-hmm.
and read the little thing, and I'm like, oh, well, that's relatable, and then left it for a long time because they didn't have any meat attached to it. Came back and got into cognitive functions and found C.S. Joseph and learned a lot through him, which I'm not a fan of him now. So that's um, I think he's a little weasel and an ESTJ, but I'll just leave that there. Still, though, I think he has a lot of interesting thoughts, and his style of presentation is really effective, and
Do
I
you
think
still
that's
like?
why he's so popular.
Do you still identify as INTP?
I don't. I I'm thinking probably ENTJ at the moment. Um, I had never really considered it before because of all the stereotypical ambition attached to it, which I don't have conventional ambition.
But I'm saying if you were asked by 10 different people, say by letter, they hand you a piece of paper and it says, "Can you please meow 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 for me?" Maybe one of the letters says, "Can you please substitute teach my class?" One of the letters says, "Can you please fill in for me at work as a cashier?" Another letter says, "Can you please put together my furniture from IKEA?" Another letter says, "Can you please compose a poem for me for school that rhymes?" Another one says, "Can you please judge a contest of songs?" Like, which of these tasks do you think you're going to be best able to succeed at, regardless of whether you feel comfortable performing under pressure at any of those tasks?
I can spit out a poem pretty easily. I'm good at judging things, but it's more on technical sorts of things. And
Okay, so you say you could spit out a poem easily.
if
So let's
if
say
I'm not being forced to right now. Yeah.
if you're not being forced to. But see, that's the whole point here. Is this is a task that you are being required to do, and you're choosing which one you're going to find least difficult or least troublesome or least in you find yourself least oppositional to.
I like to make sweeping generalizations and then see if I can defend it after that. A lot of times.
That's exciting.
Okay, that's a task, I guess. You one could be assigned. If I assigned
It's
you
like
that
it
task,
puts me in a position where I'm like, okay, I've put my foot down. Try to come at me, kind
so
of
what
thing.
sort of
Like,
sweeping generalization would you make if you were assigned that task? Do you think?
um, it could be a person I think is most likely dumb or acting that way at least, and I'll make a sweeping generalization about that person, and then uh, my like my coworker, for instance, will who I think is ESFJ, um, will be like, hold on, what, and then I'll have to defend why I think that about that person to a person who is least likely to accept that. And
Okay.
I think that that kind of helps me flesh out things in my mind.
Now, when you said sweeping generalization, I would think that that would mean, let's say you have a friend who's a librarian that's lazy. You'd make a sweeping generalization that librarians are all lazy. But instead, what you mean is you're going to make a character attack on the person, an ontological attack, and say you are lazy. I wouldn't really call that a sweeping generalization.
No, it's more like I see a person and I'm like, these kinds of people are like this.
Okay, so because when you initially asked the question, you said you'd make a sweeping generalization about the person.
Well, I'll see a person and then that's what'll trigger it.
Because when you said you would make a sweeping generalization about the person, you misspoke. What you meant was you make a sweeping generalization, you generate one from the person.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, all right, cool. Just to clarify. Um, okay,
Or it'll be like, this person reminds me of this archetype of person I have.
okay. So, what kind of archetype of person does Matt remind you of?
Um, I don't know. Mostly it just fits into bearded white guy for now,
Okay,
who
what?
likes to get his drink on a bit.
Okay, and
He's nice.
what
I don't really
about?
have any like he's not triggering anything. It's usually a negative thing.
Okay, and what are some of your negative archetypes, and
Oh, hell
describe
yeah.
them for us?
Not triggering negative things.
I'm sorry, what was it?
So,
Feel
what?
good.
Give me an example or two of a negative archetype that you might use in talking about somebody or in referencing somebody.
Generally a Trump supporter, like an obvious Trump supporter type person, because I live in a place where there's a lot of those. Someone who drives a giant truck who that's whatever they call it, where it's like that, the fucking like the wheel, it's like jacked up in the front.
Okay.
Lift.
Um, yeah, uh, I'll I have strong opinions like that that I usually don't voice because, well, unless it's someone I'm comfortable with and who understands that I'm not just a terrible person, you know.
Hmm.
I have to keep a lot of things in.
So when you say sweeping generalizations, you really mean reducing individuals to members of their group, right?
Sure, it goes on to outside of individuals too. I think I'm very kind of Thanos minded,
No, but
where
what I'm saying is by
like
reducing individuals members of their group, when you're saying like a sweeping generalization is your archetype or an archetype manifests as like Trump supporters. What you're saying is when you're sweeping generalization, you're reducing individual human beings to representations of your understanding of their group. That's the thing you're doing
I
rather
like to
than
do that, but I'm also aware that talking to that individual is different than talking to another individual inside that group. I
okay.
just choose to ignore that for the purpose of what I'm thinking about a lot of times, and that can
Okay.
be misunderstood easily.
Okay, cool. I'm not trying to judge you about this, by the way.
I
I'm
know.
just trying to
Well,
understand what you're saying more precisely.
I'm used to having to explain that sort of thing. Really.
Okay, so what's your thought about? Why don't we ask you a couple of TI questions and see how you fare on them?
All right. I'll try to pay attention this time.
So if some beavers chop down trees, and all things that chop down trees use chainsaws, is it the case that all beavers must chop down? Is it the case that some beavers? Let me use chainsaws. I'll repeat it. If some beavers chop down trees, and all things that chop down trees use chainsaws, is it the case necessarily that some beavers use chainsaws?
Yes.
Okay. If all giraffes have long necks, and some things that have long necks also have long tails, is it necessarily the case that some giraffes have long tails?
I was
If
so good as if I was sober.
I'll repeat this. If
okay.
if all giraffes have long necks and some things with long necks also have long tails, is it necessarily the case that some giraffes have long tails?
No.
Okay. If only Egyptians build pyramids and Matt has built a pyramid in his backyard, can we conclude necessarily that Matt is Egyptian?
No.
If um, if all pyramids are built by Egyptians and Matt has built the pyramid, can we conclude that Matt's an Egyptian?
Yes.
Okay. Um, if only Mary Sue likes lettuce and your brother Tom is Mary Sue, is a Mary Sue, can we conclude that your brother Tom likes lettuce?
It depends on if Mary Sue, the first Mary Sue is a name, because Mary Sue in the second
Okay,
instance
if
could
only
just be
Mary
the term
Sue's,
Mary
let
Sue.
me repeat it. If only Mary Sue's eat lettuce, and your brother Tom is a Mary Sue, can we conclude that your brother Tom eats lettuce?
Yes. It de- I mean, assuming that you mean the correct Mary Sue,
Okay.
the meaning of Mary Sue.
Let's see. Who is
If you mean
my
just the name, then I would choose just a different name because
who
that's a
is my
term.
mother's husband's only son-in-law's
Hold on. Mother's husbands. Is that where you're
my
at?
mother's husband's only son-in-law's only son in relation to me?
Mother's husbands, and then
Only
go from there.
son-in-law's only son.
Okay. Only son-in-law, and then what?
Only son. Only son-in-law's only son.
Me?
Me, correct. Matt, let me ask you one of those questions too, okay? Um, who is my paternal grandmother's?
Wait, who are you?
I'm me. Who is my paternal grandmother's?
Your paternal grandmother. Alright,
Are you
paternal.
gonna write this down? I don't want you to write it down, Matt. Who is my paternal grandmother's husband's uh, only son's wife's only son's sister in relation to me? Who is my paternal grandmother's wife's? I'm sorry, my paternal grandfather.
You don't even know what
No, no,
question.
I remember. I know. My maternal grandfather, my paternal grandmother's husband's.
So your grandmother on your father's side.
Yeah, it's paternal grandmother, correct. My paternal grandmother's husband's son's
So my
wife's only
grandfather's
son's sister.
son, who is
My
maybe my
my
uncle.
pat- no my yeah okay, I should have said only son. My paternal grandmother's wife's only son's um own wife's only son's sister in relation to me.
You're the bitch you fucked last week.
It's my sister, Matt. Don't talk about her like that.
I'm.
Okay, Matt, you're totally useless. I gotta tell you that. You are. I don't know if you're just too drunk to ti. I've
Hey, Eric.
what?
I've made my point.
No, you haven't made any point. You've just disrupted my point. That's not
Moonshine.
making a point. That's just negating mine. And you've negated it in the most nefarious way by pretending to be incompetent in the things you're perfectly capable at.
So, Eric,
Matt, which ones did Huckleberry get wrong on those TI questions with the all and the only and stuff like that? Did he get any of them
there
wrong?
was no wrong questions. They were searching questions for like personality choice shits, and they were all just dumb logic games.
No, but the logic questions have a correct or an incorrect answer to them.
That's true, but it's
So
all
I'm
like
asking you a
it's all
question.
just the questions
Matt,
of
but I'm
of
asking
if
you a
you
question.
follow like logic shit.
But Matt, I'm asking you a specific question. Do you know which ones he got wrong?
I think he got all of them wrong.
No, he didn't.
I don't know. I got all of them wrong.
Did I get any of them wrong?
Yes, you got the onlys wrong. So, in other words, only Mary Sue's eat lettuce does not mean that any Mary Sue eats lettuce. Only, and the other only as well, you also got wrong. Only, no, you, but then you got it right when I turned it into an all. So, only Egyptians make pyramids. Matt makes a pyramid. Matt is an Egyptian. Matt makes a pyramid. No, actually, you got that one right. I got it wrong.
I got it right. I
You
got
got
them
that
all
one right.
right.
The lettuce is
The only
lettuce
one I
is
got might have gotten wrong was the one where I was confused
And
about
then
what
that's
you meant by
fair.
Mary
Fair.
Sue, and
That's
I thought
fair.
you were
That's fair. Okay, so
okay.
here's what I've concluded from testing your TI, is that you're an ISTP.
See, I just really the actual experience of hanging out with me like regularly
Doesn't
without like
matter.
an interview
Those,
style.
those aren't good ways to type people.
So ISTPs or ISFPs will produce NE when
You
like
don't.
unprompted.
You don't.
Well, this isn't
When
exactly
prompted.
my natural state
Right.
either.
But see, that's the thing. What are you going to have most difficulty to produce? When I try to ask you that question, you try to avoid the question. You say you can produce a poem, but you certainly wouldn't choose that task. So the point I'm trying to make is you've got good TI, strong TI. You got all of them right, despite me being wrong about one of them. I thought you got wrong because I realized, as I recalled, that I phrased it the wrong way.
I was really curious about what poem he would produce.
He's not going to produce a poem. And if I were going to give the test, I'd give him the first two lines and tell him to complete it. So, for example, there once was a man. There once was a man named Kevin who lived in a frozen place. And then make the next two rhymes rhyme A B.
Who pooped on his stupid ass face.
You're skipping a line. There once was a man named Kevin who lived in a very cold place.
He lived there until he was 11, but he moved because there was little space.
Okay. Now give me another answer, a different answer to the end of that poem.
Does it like do it again?
Yeah, do it again, but with. God damn it, Kitty! I don't like this when you do this.
Hey, Ron.
Why aren't you catching an animal? What am I supposed to do with this poor little bird?
This is not how I expected my night to be going.
This. Don't catch little birds.
Oh shit. Murderer.
Okay, so do a second into the poem.
What was it?
There once was a man named
Kevin
Kevin
and
who lived in a very cold place.
he moved with his family when he was 7. Numbers are all I have for Kevin. I don't know. And because they longed for the sun on their face.
Okay.
I like that.
Let's ask you this. You're in a room that has a door, but it's locked from the other side, or at least you can't open it because it's got no door handle on this side. Okay, it's just
Okay.
smooth, and it it doesn't push out; it pulls in, and you can't fit a finger underneath the crack anywhere. How do you open the door?
Are there any other people around
Yes, there's one other person.
outside the room?
No, inside the room with you. You both have just pajamas on, but there's a cabinet in the room that, and there's a window, but it has bars on it. You can't get out the window. But you could if you wanted to push the cabinet over and look out the window, or rifle through the cabinet.
Okay, well, I rifle through their cabinet, and what do I
There's
find?
there's a book in there called Weather Patterns of Northern Europe, and that's it.
That's it.
Hmm.
We playing Skyrim.
I like Skyrim.
Me too.
I like Northern
Um,
European weather patterns.
You pull in on the goddamn door. You already said it.
You can't pull it. There's nothing to grab onto. It's
You
com-
said you could pull in on the door.
no, I say it does. It is meant to pull in, not push out. But you
You
can't.
gotta
There's nothing
pull
to grab. There's nothing to grab. It's a smooth surface. It's almost perfectly even with all the door frame. So it's just like there's a teeny crack and that's it.
in. You fuck it.
You're stuck in the room though.
there's
You're trying to get out, Matt. You're
there's a
Huckleberry.
teeny crack. Can you fit the like a piece of the book in the crack?
You probably put a piece of paper in there.
What do I have in my wallet?
Do I have a utility belt?
You don't. You're in your
Suction
pajamas.
cups?
You're in your
Oh yeah.
pajamas. You don't have anything with you except your pajamas.
Well, so
I'm gonna,
yes on the utility belt then?
I'm gonna. I've had a fucking wonderful time hanging out with you guys. I'm gonna bow out of the chat because I'm only contributing being the drunk guy.
Okay, I'll see you later, Matt.
Nice meeting you.
Hey, text me, dude. I sent you my phone number, I think, didn't
Maybe as you
I? You
maybe.
emailed me. I can email you, and I'll email you.
Please be in touch.
All right, yeah,
Huckleberry, it was nice to meet you.
You
Eric,
too.
it was nice to chat with you.
Nice chatting with you too, Matt.
All right.
See you
Good,
later.
good luck with your logic games.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, we're where we were.
All right, so you said there's a window, a barred window
Hmm.
that I can or can't see out of.
You can't. You could see out of it if you push the cabinet over to that wall and stand on top of
All right, let's do that and look out and
it.
see what we
Okay.
see.
You're high up in a tower. You can see about maybe 130 degrees width before you hit the side of the tower again, and you don't see any of the buildings around. You just see some forest and off in the distance a shoreline.
I mean, how sturdy is this door?
Well, thus far you haven't been able to get any real purchase on it, but when you pound on it, it feels pretty solid. It doesn't seem like something you're going to be able to break through. Which depends. I mean, you might try. You might be able to successfully break through it if you battered on it with something.
Who am I in the room with?
It's a lady. She's 23 years old and studying Portuguese and was on a an excursion to Portugal for spring break when, like you, she went to bed normally in the hotel room. For you, it was in your own house, and then woke up. She was in these pajamas, same kind of pajamas you're wearing, these teddy bear
Was it a Saw
pajamas.
situation?
And you're both in the tower there, and you don't know how you got there. You went to bed alone in your own beds, and you just both woke up there, and you're like, "What the fuck? How did we get here?" Her name's Megan, like the
You get-
yeah, like the Key and Peele character. She doesn't act like her though.
um, I thought of the Walking Dead villain,
Is that a
but
Walking Dead villain named Megan?
Negan, yeah, it's a pretty good villain actually. But does she have any ideas or anything in her pocket, or I guess they're in pajamas?
I think we should knock on the door.
Well, then I already pound on it to see if it was.
You have to knock
Yeah.
more politely than that. She goes over to the door and goes. You hear some footsteps running over to the door from the behind the
Oh.
door, and they stop and they run away. Well, then you don't hear anything anymore. It's kind of maybe you hear her walking away from the door.
uh, is there anything I can write with?
Mm, well, you don't see any pens or pencils. You've got a barred window. You've got a cabinet. You've got a book. It does have a couple of blankish pages in it. You could write on those pages in theory. There is, of course, something you could write with.
Well, I guess blood is the first thing that came to mind, but
You have to draw blood from yourself somehow, though,
why does it have to be from me?
or
I'm
from
kidding.
her. But still, you're gonna have to puncture her in some way. How are you gonna puncture her to get the blood out?
So I don't want to be so sure that this is the way to go quite yet, but it seems like you might be helping me along down that path. I don't know.
It just occurred to me. I had never thought about the idea of writing anything or whatever. I'm just making this story as I go along, based on one I've
Yeah.
sort of told before, but variations to it.
Yeah, I'd probably maybe I would maybe try to find an appealing page to. It sounds like maybe it's a child or something. An appealing page in the book for a child and slip it under the door and see if they're interested and want to open the door and see the book.
Okay. Um, have you ever done a remote associations test before?
I don't think so.
Okay, so I will. Um, so, for example, your clues are given are like cottage, Swiss, and cake. And the answer is cheese because cottage cheese, Swiss cheese, and cheesecake. See,
Okay.
all right. So, for example, cream, skate, water.
Cream. Oh, ice.
Right. Loser,
Oh,
throat, spot.
sore.
Mm-hmm. Show, life, row.
On. Oh no. Like show must go on, but no.
It.
Show life row.
Mm-hmm.
The row's messing me up.
It's boat.
Ah, wait. Lifeboat?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Showboat, lifeboat, and rowboat. Okay, night, wrist, and stop.
Watch.
Mm-hmm. All right, now I'm going to go up a level of difficulty. That was the bottom level of difficulty. Next is a little bit challenging, more challenging. Aid, rubber, or wagon?
Aid, rubber, or wagon.
Mm-hmm. It's banned. Flake, mobile, or cone?
Flake, mobile, or cone.
Flake, or mobile, or cone? I should have said mobile.
Like the thing that, like for babies.
Yeah. Flake, mobile, and cone.
Flake.
Yeah.
Frosted. Yeah.
It's snow.
uh,
Snow. Okay, let me do two more at this level
oh,
and see how you do
I
on
was
a couple
thinking of
more of
the
these.
wrong mobile.
Safety, cushion, point. The answer is pen. Safety pen, pen cushion, and pinpoint. How about dream, break, light? The answer is day. One more at this level. Fish, mine, rush.
Yeah, I'm pretty much just pretending to try it at this point.
Okay, it's gold. Okay. Um, so this is what I would call a intuition test broadly. So, for example, both NI DOMs and NE DOMs do well on this test, and usually can get all the very easies, most of the easies, half the mediums, a couple of the hards, and one or two of the very hards. And we topped out on easy with you. So that tells me intuition function, whether N or NE or NI, is lower than second. It's third or fourth. It's a pretty conclusive test because it's the only test I know that both intuitive types do well on. The Inky Pinky test is one that NE types do well on. So, given that you're third or fourth NI, I think you're probably third NI, given your strong TI response, which would be consistent with that score result on that, and it's also consistent with your TI, your strong TI results. So, ISTP is consistent with those results, and ISTP is also consistent with your TI results.
I'm just so different from I date an ISGP, like like a textbook one kind of.
Okay, so
And the way we go
how would you
about
describe a textbook ISTP?
um, good with our hands, kind of artistic in a very concrete way. Um, it's TI is clear. I won't try to
ISTPs
go into
are
that, but
generally not artistic at all.
well, she's like we had a boring kitchen table, and she just did some like little like flower designs on it, and then like lacquered over it, and now it looks cool. That kind of thing.
Okay, so my
But
ESFJ wife used to do a lot of that, so that's not very demonstrative of ISTP necessarily. It's a TE thing more than a TI thing, really.
well, let's not get hung up on that then. But um,
I'm just saying I'm not convinced that this person you were with that you're convinced was an ISTP is actually an ISTP.
I understand that.
Okay,
She's like the okay. So one difference is we were at Universal Studios uh, before all the COVID stuff, and I have a problem with it too, but she acts on the problems that she has in line, for instance, when you know those people that will pretty much cut everyone all the time and just act like there's someone waiting for them at the front of the line.
okay,
Um, I pretty much had put it in her head. It was like there's people that do that, and with that knowledge, um, she decides to physically stop them from going by when it happens, creating a scene, and
and how does she
that
do that?
forces me into a. I'm sorry, what?
How does she go about physically stopping them?
Like putting her arm out and stopping them from passing.
Okay, so she doesn't initiate physical contact with them.
No, well, I mean, she made it to where it was unavoidable if they wanted to continue walking as they wanted to do.
Okay, um,
Me, on the other hand, I just say something like "you're a fucking asshole" as they go by. You know, like fuck
okay.
you.
So how did she talk to those people once she had done that?
She's pretty much just like, no, you're not going by. I know what you're doing. And that's all.
I see. And did they respond?
Yeah, it was this whole big thing, and
What did they
they're like, my
say?
dad's waiting for me up there. It was like two grown men, you know, and that's when I like where I would have rather like I would have avoided that and just called him like, a name on
But
the way by and
but what
like
did
I know what you're doing.
but
Fuck
what
you.
did she? How did
And
she respond to that?
to what exactly?
To when they
Them trying
said
to
when they're then trying to work their narrative.
no, no, absolutely not. It's not. That is not the case, and I know it. Just double down. Yeah.
Okay. And um, what did they end up doing?
I ended up
Well, what did they
getting
end?
in between them
You ended up getting
and
in between them.
telling
Okay.
them that they can stand behind me, and then they kind of like ducked under the thing and made it like past other people, and
And what was your girlfriend's
um,
justification for being so upset about it?
well, that was like the 20th person to like 20 like 19th and 20th person to try that in the line that we had been waiting in for like 2 hours at that point.
Did she talk about it after the fact?
Yeah,
What did she say about it after the fact?
resolved. Uh, you know,
Those aren't things that she said. She didn't say resolved. What did she say about it?
I couldn't tell you exactly what she said.
Okay. So another indication of backside SI, for example, is your tendency to,
I agree with that.
you know, um, find the universal in the thing rather than the particular. Uh, okay.
That's the thing about my SI is it's weird for me because I used to be pretty comfortable with it being third slot because I'm like I like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and those are special to me and I reference them and things like that. But at the same time, I've been doing the same job with the same routes, the houses I go to for 3 years now, and I need the GPS for every house all the time.
Okay. So
Um,
what we see then,
Things like that, they don't stick.
as far as your SI goes, it's pretty good when it comes to the genealogy problems. In other words, you don't have to write it down. I might have to repeat it once, but more or less you can
Well, yeah, that
remember
was
it.
like,
Okay,
yeah,
but listen, remember, I'm not comparing you against an ideal. I'm comparing you against the performance of lots of other people.
sure,
So
yeah.
I'm saying your SI is pretty good in that regard. If it were back slot but seventh or eighth, it probably wouldn't be that good. So that would make it fifth or sixth. Now, I don't think you're an SE Dom. You don't think you're an SE Dom.
Yeah, my entire life experience would say definitely not to that.
So that would put it 6, which again is consistent with ISTP. So it's three separate data points that are actual tests of attentional manners rather than some correlate that align with ISTP.
Then why? Okay, why is it that they've gotten all of, like, at least for me, it's ISTP is never relatable in any way when anyone describes it,
Um,
other than maybe the TI part, which I it's it seems to me like it's hard to differentiate a TI DOM from a TE DOM in a lot of cases because one validates on one and then you know
well, I mean,
does
look,
on the other.
it is plausible that your TI could be fifth slot. That's not completely implausible. TI fifth is very strong, as is TI Dom.
Let's get at the validation part.
Yours seems stronger than fifth slot to me, but it is true, at least possible, I'm not. In other words, I'm not saying your TI results are conclusive on Dom. I'm saying they're conclusive as 1, 2, or 5. 4, 3, 7, 6, and 8 are all going to be weaker than that. Now, INTJ TI is better than ISTJ TI usually, and it also depends on what kind of specific work they do. Sometimes they can show better the sixth slot than other times. But given that it's 1, 2, or 5, well, you could, in theory, still be an ENTJ. But we have to look also at um, the SI results. Your SI is way too good for an ENTJ. An ENTJ cannot do the memory part of those things. So the ENTJ might be good about the questions like the alls and the nos and the sums questions, but they're not going to be good at the genealogy question. They're not going to be able to keep that even that much in their head for that long, probably. So that's counterindicative of the ENTJ, although again, not absolutely certain because if I
The
wanted to
way I
test
go
it,
about doing that though is point by point. Is I'll be like, okay, he said this, here I am. He said this, here I am. And if you wanted me to backtrack,
okay, well,
that might be harder to do.
now look, if it is in fact the case that you're an ENTJ, then here's a definitive test on it right here. We can test it for sure. Tell me, I'm going to demonstrate a linear progression of things I've done the last few hours or whatever, or what it sounds like, and then you do the same thing for me back, okay, for your own last few hours. So a few hours ago, I was live streaming, and then Matt showed up, and you also indicated you wanted to chat, and so I made both things happen in sort of semi concurrently, and I quit live streaming. Then I opened this room, and Matt was here, and then you came in, and then I said, if you want me to ask him to leave, I can. Matt didn't care at all, but you had already left at that point, and and then after at the prescribed time, you came back, and then I had to go get cigarettes. And then I came back from getting cigarettes, and I came inside, and then I realized I needed something to drink. I went back inside and got a beer or non-alcoholic beer, and then I came back inside, and then the cat came inside and brought this bird inside. Okay, like that. Can
That's
you
a lot of
do?
stuff.
You don't have to do that many, but can you
Yeah,
do something equivalent?
honestly, most of the detail I would include you just said, and I would have just stolen it from you. But
Well, then do
the
your
parts of it that
morning.
included
Do
me,
getting up in the morning
my
instead.
my morning though is I woke up and looked outside to see if it was still storming, and saw that it wasn't. And got up, and I think you were live streaming at that point, but might not have been quite. I think you were. I don't know. Watched some of your live stream, and I probably would have skipped over that part if you hadn't reminded me of it, um, and skipped straight to this. You told me to
What did you have to eat today?
join. I've only drank some Gatorade.
How long have you been awake for?
About 4 hours now, almost.
Okay, that's not a super long time. I often do that too. All right, so based on that test, your SI sounds better than polar, but let me double check because, like you said, you didn't really actually give me many details. Can you think of the last time you went to a restaurant?
COVID times. Um, I remember times I went to a restaurant that are memorable. I don't remember the last time I went to a restaurant.
All right, well, on one of those times you went to a restaurant that was memorable, can you remember some small incident that might not be significant from that instance? Like, for example, remember somebody carrying dishes back to the kitchen and dropping a plate and it breaking, or someone of your party having dropped their fork on the floor and needed to get a new one. Something insignificant like that.
I wouldn't be able to pinpoint that to a time I went, but I remember things like that happening while I'm out in a general sense. I remember mostly with something like that. I was in the army before, and every time someone would drop something in the cafeteria, we'll just call it, um,
The
like
mess.
drop their plate, spill something, everyone would shout out newbie,
Do you remember any
and it was
specific
this whole
time when
thing,
that happened, or just that it always happened?
that it always happened. I have like one pin like specific image of what maybe I was seeing at one point when that happened, but that is like the thumbnail for all of them, pretty much.
Okay, is there some person in your life that you have the same argument with more than once? Like maybe maybe you got a friend Darren and he annoys you with the way he always goes, "Catch you later, loser," when he hangs up the phone. And you always talk to him about it, and you never seem to get anywhere about it. Something like that. Something insignificant again.
uh,
Somebody with whom you have a repeated conflict.
Honestly, with people I have repeated conflicts with, I usually just end up having not much to do with them anymore.
Okay, how about a repeated point of,
But it's not a serious thing. It's just like maybe a small point of contention, or
or even just not even a point of contention necessarily. Maybe something you have to talk to him about regularly, like your bowling night on Wednesday. You always text Dawn about bowling on Wednesdays or something like that. Something that happens repeatedly. It doesn't have to be that
nothing.
repeatedly, but somebody that you talk to intermittently, a couple times a week, and similar subjects come up most times you talk to them.
My friend, like, I have one best friend that is the only person I talk to on a regular basis, other than the people I live with, and I think he probably just avoids all of those sorts of things. He'll just be quiet, so it doesn't come up much.
Okay, well, again, I'm not talking necessarily about a conflict. Do you communicate with him regularly?
I do.
Can you think of any topic about which you've communicated with him more than once?
Um, yeah, I'll go on rants about typology, especially a lot of times, and I'm sure he's heard the same rant quite a few times.
Okay. Can you think of the last time that you did that?
It's I would just have to say it's safe to say the last time I talked to him one on one.
Okay. Do you remember anything
Often,
that made that conversation about it distinct from any of the other conversations about it?
no.
Okay. Well, you might very well be E and TJ. Those are all very SI polar answers. And your TI could be, as I said, fifth slot, first, second, or fifth. Fifth would be for ENTJ. It would explain the both obvious distaste you have for extroverted intuition and also your capacity to do those poems better than ISTP would. So, in that sense, your NE results are more consistent with ENTJ, and it's looking right now like your SI results are more consistent with ENTJ too. That's going to be definitive. If I can pin down your SI as polar, then you have to be ENFJ or ENTJ, and you're definitely not ENFJ. So,
I would say that's definitely not the case.
let me ask a couple more SI questions and see what kind of results I get. So you've been up for 4 hours. You haven't eaten. When do you plan to eat, or do you plan to eat, or have you thought about it?
I haven't really thought about it until you asked, but Usually I would be at work, and I would usually like at around noon, I would be like, oh man, I haven't eaten and I'm hungry. And I sweat a lot and do a lot of stuff, so I need to eat something.
So what do
So
you eat
it's
at
one of
lunch
those
usually?
things. Usually I'll just stop at Publix or Harris Teeter or something and just get one of the pre-made sandwiches they make.
I don't know either of those two store
It's
brands.
grocery stores.
Grocery stores? Are they in another part of the country or are they Canadian?
They're in the East Coast.
Oh,
East
okay.
Coast.
All right, cool. Um, because I didn't think you were Canadian. I thought you were American, but when I
Yeah.
heard two different names I've never heard of before for stores, I thought maybe you're Canadian. Okay, cool. So, and do you spend any attention on enjoying your food, or is your goal just to get it down your gullet?
It's mostly to get it down. I mean I pick like I'll get the same thing from those places all the time. It's just this is what I like and I'll get that.
Mm,
And I don't feel like being adventurous with that kind of thing.
I see. And when you don't eat out, what do you how do you provide food for yourself?
I make sure that I have a partner who does that for me most of the time.
Okay,
And
and does your
yeah.
current partner provide you food?
Mhm.
Does she live with you?
Mhm.
And how regularly does she feed you?
Look at the dog. It's almost how I would have it in that kind of way, to be honest. But
When you ask for food, or is there a regular schedule?
there's she's it's a tentative like schedule like because there's a kid too. She has we look after an 8-year-old together. It's her daughter, and she has to have a scheduled feeding time as well. So
Uh-huh.
that's when I'll eat usually.
Okay. If she is not home, let's say they've gone out of town to visit her mom for 2 days or something. What do you do?
Pizza. I'll pick up like an extra sandwich at lunchtime to eat later. And I just don't want to have to put any effort towards that kind of thing. I don't like mundane things like that.
Do you have a regular bedtime?
Um, it depends. Like I work half the year and then I don't work half the year. Um, and the half of the year that I work, I tend to just go to bed whenever I get sleepy at the end of the day, which is usually pretty early, honestly. And I'll wake up early and mess around on my computer until I go to work. But the half of the year where I don't work, it's who knows. It doesn't go anywhere.
How many hours of sleep a night do you think you get?
Plenty at this point in my life. It wasn't that case when I was a little younger.
What does plenty mean?
Until I'm ready to get up, usually.
But can you give me some idea of how many hours that is? Six, eight, 10?
Probably around 6 or 7, usually.
Okay. When you get up, you don't note at all how many hours you slept, or think to yourself.
No, as long as I feel like I'm ready to go.
Do you check to see if you feel sleepy still?
Um, not so much anymore because like I used to have a real problem with getting up and like waking up and especially when I was in the army. I wish I was more like this back then. I would have had a lot less trouble. I had the opposite problem that I have now. It's like I'm always like as soon as I wake up, I'm just like, all right, let's go, let's get it. And back then it was the opposite of that completely. It's weird.
So you had a hard time waking up.
Before.
And did you have a hard time going to sleep too?
I think I was one of those people that tried to steal. Like I felt like I didn't have enough free time in my personal life, and I would try to steal it at the end of the day
I see.
and fuck myself out of sleep.
So then when you go to crash out and only have like 3 or 4 hours until you have to get up, when you had to get up, you
Right,
had trouble waking up. I see.
right.
Um, well, everything you're saying sounds SI polar to me. Uh, my inability to get an answer from you on the common conversation, this particular instance of the commonly held conversation, like I typically get people to say, "Yeah, I sometimes will bicker with my wife about how long it takes her to respond to my texts. I'll sometimes complain about that, for example. Most people have something like that.
See, that reminds me of something with my girlfriend,
Okay.
but I couldn't pull that out without the prompting, I guess. Like she's ISTP, I think ISTP, and along with that seems to be messiness. They're not very tidy,
Okay.
so I kind of have to be the um, this place is a dump guy, and that's uncomfortable for me. I haven't had to be like that before. I usually carefully pick people that are going to make up for my weaknesses.
Okay. Do you remember the last time you brought up that subject to her?
Uh, no, it's been a while because I haven't felt like having the conflict lately.
And if you do bring it up, did she say, "Well, why don't you clean up"?
No, because I at the beginning, well, kind of sometimes she'll hint at it, but she won't say it because I kind of lay down like this is the type of creature I am at the beginning, and it's almost like an unwritten contract that she signed. Like this is what I'm dealing with. Um, I'm straightforward about a lot of things like that.
But what if her interpretation of the reality is different from what she perceived the reality was going to be based on the contractual information you gave her initially? In other words, you can't very well say she's fully informed before she's actually lived in the relationship.
Yeah, I can make it seem that way to her when we're arguing about it, though.
But that's not very caring.
It's a give and take, like anything else.
Okay. All right. Um, that FE right there, that could be either fourth or eight. So it doesn't really give us any guidance as to ISP or ENTJ. But I'm going to tell you this: you
I've
seem much more likely to be SI polar than NE polar. And if you're SI polar, then you're definitely an ENTJ. Um, so I think after all the playing around with the notion that you were an ISTP, um, sufficient testing convinced me that you are, in fact, what you thought you were coming in, which is an ENTJ. That makes the most
hmm,
sense with the data that I have from testing you.
cool. I mean, yeah, INTP. It was INTP or nothing for the longest time, and
So
a lot
yeah,
of the
I guess
stereotypical things just turn me off. Yeah,
ENTJs do have a reputation for being high achievers and kind of like corporate but
yeah.
that's just
I'm more
stereotype.
of a Robin Hood type of person. I like to think, at least. Like, I'd rather take from those people and disperse it. Uh, you know,
You
I
you
don't. I
don't
think
you
that's
don't
a
concern yourself about the
misconception.
justice of the action, just the justice of the outcome.
Yeah.
That's a lot of hubris, don't you think?
I'm
I mean,
I'm well, maybe.
what if I took that same approach towards violating your rights?
I understand. There is a certain like Thanos quality to the way I think a lot of times. And people like me, I've always said that there's a huge difference in president me and king me. You know?
There's zero
Um,
difference between President Me and King Me.
is that right?
That's correct. King Me makes King Me into President Me is his first act because that's the most
Yeah.
principled thing that one could do is constrain the power of the central authority figure.
I would be more likely to just really carefully select my council of people and do my best from there instead of like I'm not exactly just pure pro democracy kind of I mean that's probably obvious, but
I'm not pro
I'm
democracy
also a little
myself,
bit
actually.
anti-capitalistic
I'm
by
not pro
nature, I
democracy.
think.
I'm pro individual, and nobody's really anti-capitalist. That's a misnomer. What they mean is they don't like the status quo. To be anti-capitalist is simply to say you don't like people engaging in interchange with each other as they see fit, and that's ridiculous. Everybody agrees that's natural right.
I think it's irrefutable that that's a natural right until it becomes a problem to the house you live on,
How is it a
to
problem to the house you live on? How are other people's
the,
success
the earth.
problematic or responsible for somebody else's failure?
I think it's more of a an overall uh, like rules for humanity instead of rules for like I hear the argument about the individual rights and everything, but we need generalized rules across the
That
species
is
as
a
well.
generalized rule across the species that, at least on the negative grounds, that the violation of individual rights is morally impermissible universally. What the problem is you're saying you don't want generalized rules. You want your perception of what matters to be prioritized, and that effectiveness is justified because you deem it just. But you don't even justify deeming it just. You just claim it to be such.
Right, and honestly, I agree, and I'm aware of that, and it would be up to me to state my case in a way that you can't refute it so I can get my way instead of hammer fisting my way to the goal.
But see, what you want to do, your goal is to hammer fist. Your goal is to prevent capitalism, quote unquote. What that means is you want to use guns to stop people from doing what they choose to do amongst themselves. That's what that means.
I want to stop, in whatever way works, people from yeeting off of the cliff that I see.
Okay, but whatever way works means you're justifying the means with the ends.
The means, yes.
Yeah, okay, so that
I'm not
makes
saying
you
that.
worse than the problem you're solving.
I'm saying that it shouldn't be up to any individual to decide any of this, but you do need someone who the way I like to like the sweeping generalizations I was talking about, maybe it's just the wrong words to use, but I like to be like, here's the way I see we need to go. Now, I've selected or through whatever objective process that we've come up with, you people have been selected to see that through in the best way possible.
But you're not talking about
I'm
specific policy prescriptions, really.
I'm not a specifics person. That's what other people would be brought on to do.
Okay, but so your policy advocacy, as a general policy advocacy, is a preferred frame of interpretation. But in order to say that anybody should prefer that frame of interpretation, it has to be preferable to other frames, and it's simply not.
To me, it depends on my ability to explain what I'm trying to explain, which is not good enough yet, and I wouldn't say that it's even close. But and to I forgot where I was going, but
If you don't have the
uh,
arguments, you're not affirming anything. You don't have any reason to
right,
believe
what
the thing
right
that you're
now,
believing.
and that's why I'm still dormant. Really, I'm
Ah!
still
Oh,
biting.
I knocked over the bong, but no bong water spilled. Hallelujah.
Score.
That's a good day. That's a heck of a day. Um. Okay. Well, I think you're probably an ENTJ. It seems like the best conclusion to draw.